Thank you very much, Virginia. Very well, warm good evening, good afternoon from myself. Markus Trilling, my name. Just allow me to share my screen with you. You should be seeing it now in full size. I see Virginia now. Good afternoon. You heard about people like me. I'm a lobbyist. I'm a Brussels lobbyist. I'm lobbying the EU. But my interest is, what I'm gaining is, me and my colleagues in the environmental scene, we want to prevent the collapse of planet Earth. We need to stop and reverse the practices, the economy, the habitats we're having in Europe, in the world, in order to make sure that in 100 years, we have a planet which is worth living. And I'm speaking to you from this perspective of a lobbyist in Brussels, on the Brussels institution. And I'm part of a network of non-environmental organizations, NGOs, civil society groups. This is Can Europe Network. And my particular speciality is the money coming from the EU. I'm looking at what subsidies the EU is giving out to its member states, farmers, regions, or now newly, as Virginia mentioned as well, to recover from the economic crisis. The economic crisis is not the only crisis. We are in a very severe crisis. We have 1.1 degree global warming already. We are in the middle of the 6th mass extinction of species in the world. We are wasting resources, we're exploiting resources and throwing it away in a very unsustainable way. What you here see, this is the level of greenhouse gas emissions which the EU is emitting. You see, this was in the year 1990, it was 5,000 million tons. Today, in 2020, we reduced it 24% compared to 1990, but in order to keep global warming under control, meaning in order to limit the rise of temperature to 1.5 degrees, we have to make radical, bold action. You see this here, the graph from 2020 to 2030. In my organization, we are convinced that in order for Europe to have the fair share in fighting global warming, the EU has to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 65%. So this is 10 years' time. And you see, we have to speed up. We have to accelerate the transition to ensure we are less polluting and less emitting. And now I'm coming to our topic today. This 10 years is exactly the time when the EU budget and when the recovery fund is going to be spent. This is a lot of money for many countries and for many regions. You will see this later. The investments decision made today will define how our economy looks like in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. This is why it is so important today that we really think where the money is going, the public money and the EU money. And this is what I'm going to show you in the next 10 minutes, how much money there is for each country. And then Virginia introduced it. There is this so much recovery funding, the recovery plans. And my organization, we were looking into those draft plans in the first versions. And it is still too early to say, to give a final verdict. But what I can show you, what are the good practices are, what are the missed opportunities, and where the ugly face of EU funding can be seen. Ladies and gentlemen, Here you see a graph which shows how much money from the EU budget is going to the different countries. You see very prominent, the dark orange, this is the recovery money we are speaking about, but there are other funds as well, and they are not less important. We see the common agricultural policy, of course, factory farming is financed by the EU budget. And we see as well in blue, cohesion funds, structural funds, particularly important for the less developed regions in the east, in the south. How much money is 150 billion euros? We'll come to this. As Virginia mentioned, you can have the presentation if you like, and with it, a concrete list where you can see for your country how much is in it from the recovery from the agricultural fund. But still, question. How much is 145 billion in Italy versus 14 billion in Lithuania? What you see here is if all the money is put together and you compare it to the economy, to the size of the economy of the country, this can give you a little bit the idea of how much money we are talking about. Obviously, Bulgaria, Croatia, Latvia, Romania, Poland. This is the budget, which a government budget. So you can run a country with this money coming from the EU alone. But thanks to the recovery fund, as well, those countries who did not benefit that much from the EU budget have significant resources. We're looking at Spain, we're looking at Italy, and so on. How much is 10% of the GDP for public money? To put this into perspective, governments put 3% of their budgets into infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools. So all what a country has to publicly invest in infrastructure can safely be covered with EU funds. Now the question is, where does the money go? My organization, Can Europe, is a network of 180 NGOs. We ran a campaign, it's called the EU Cash Awards, cashawards.eu. You can look it up. There you can find everything which I'm telling you. And there we have been looking into those spending plans which member states have been developed in the last half a year. We have been able to access the spending plans of 16 countries. And out of this, we picked up 50 and more examples, illustrative examples, which demonstrate how, in our view, transformative, positive spending looks like, and the opposite, where we think this is not only a waste of money, but this is harmful to the environment. We identified a lot of good examples. We saw many missed opportunities, and we have straight away projects financed by the EU which destroy the environment. For example, I'm giving you now a couple of examples. Cycling, the most sustainable way, a healthy way for cities as well. There we see Italy making a big step forward. In Spain, rural areas have a demographic problem. And here we as well dedicated funds to help the ecological transition of rural areas in Spain. You might have heard of energy communities, small communities who want to take their energy destiny in their own hand and have their own renewable projects. EU funds, recovery funds in Poland and in Bulgaria supporting it. Energy efficiency in buildings, it's so important. 40% of emissions stemming from the building sector. And here we have in Belgium, again, in the Polish and in the Spanish plans, funding which really aims to help the renovation of buildings to make our homes cozy and warm, and to save energy and save emissions. However, speaking about energy efficiency, we have as well seen plenty of examples in Latvia, in Germany, in France, in Bulgaria, where we would say this is far away from what is needed. It is not the right buildings. It is not the right systems. Reforms are missing. The targets are too low. So here we say, this is a missed opportunity. You have the money, put it put it into the right measures. Then we have here as well in the transport sector. We have to get away from the combustion engine. We have to electrify. We have to have new modes of transport. I mentioned cycling with a big demand, but it's been neglected. And we still see member states betting rather to support road construction and air transport, whereas railways and cycling might be neglected. Here you see as well some cases where I'm speaking of myself as a lobbyist, where lobbyism worked because bad measures in Portugal and Slovenia have been withdrawn and replaced with more favorable measures for the transport sector. We have seen missed opportunities when it comes to installing renewable energy sources. Wind and sun are for free. The economists among you will know that there are marginal costs of close to zero, unimaginable. However, still, it seems there are countries where they think the wind never blows and the sun never shines, where just simply a big potential lays untapped. Then we see as well questionable solution where renewables are used for producing hydrogen. Sounds like a fancy technology, awfully wasteful if you don't have enough renewable electricity in the first place. Germany, who had thought this, still betting on supporting fossil fuel mobility. We see the same in the northern part of Flanders, where the good old car seems to be king forever. We have a run on burning the climate, on continue subsidizing fossil fuels. This is about the gas use. This is about gas in electricity. This is gas in heating. This is burning scarce resources. Here as well, we see those companies which are pollute the most, they get the bailout. So a lot of shameful project examples, which I'm coming up with. I'm coming now towards the end after running you through those examples, because what I could only do, I could shed some highlights on some thoughts. You can imagine a spending plan worth 120 billion euros is much more complex and much wider. And here as well, I'm giving you an example of the devil in the detail, right? For example, that the recovery plans or the recovery facility requires member states to do reforms. And what we see in Slovenia, they are cutting red tape, saying this is our reform, but in reality, this is compromising environmental safeguards. There were harmful projects in the first version of the Slovenian recovery plan. Then they took it out, but they are not gone. Now they are being financed from other funds, from cohesion funds or the national budget. And as well, Virginia mentioned that those recovery plans have a quantitative target that 37% of each plan has to serve climate action and the ecological transition. But is this all green? or is this greenwashing? Again, an example from Slovenia, that in Ljubljana, the beautiful capital, a new central station is being built with shopping malls and parking lots. You know this, consumer paradise. This is called climate action. More concrete for dams and flood barriers. Climate action. I was speaking about sustainable transport infrastructure, electrification. 1/3 is electricity, 2/3, again, gas, counted as green. So it is very difficult to assess in the entirety of the plans. Many elements can only be assessed in the national context. However, by the 6th of May, 40 member states have submitted their national recovery and resilience plans. For those, the Commission has 2 months to assess them, then they might be adopted. So from what we have seen, and this is, we haven't seen the entire plan. They are kept in secret. It's really too early to have a final comprehensive verdict. However, what we think now, our impression is that when you remember the first slide I showed about the steep reduction curve, which requires bold action and strategic foresight to take those investment decisions. We haven't seen this. We haven't seen really any country saying we are really super anxious to finance the transition entirety. We haven't seen really those policy and legislative reforms which would be needed to increase the ambition we needed. And even more important, we see a lot of projects which risk to lock us in, to cement us into burning fossil fuels, burning scarce resources. So all over, we fear at this time that the transformational potential of EU funding remains untapped, that EU funds are below their possibilities to bring the new investments, to bring the change, the rebuilding of all sectors of the economy, which we would need to save the climate, save the planet. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we have now a little bit time for your questions.
Thank you.
And I stopped sharing my screen.
Great. Thanks a lot. So as promised, now it's the floor is yours, as in all of you. If you want to ask questions, I can see already 2 of them in the chat. Maybe Markus, if you want to take a look and see if you want to address them and how. But yeah, now it's the time to ask clarifications or any other type of questions.
Yeah, just the 2 comments on hydrogen. Thank you very much. This is the point. Hydrogen H2 is an energy carrier. You can produce this out of electricity via electrolysis. If you use renewable energy for this, this is emission free. You can have it as well with gas. Then it is not fossil fuel free. But if you do it the green way, it uses a lot of still scarce renewable energy, renewable electricity. And we cannot afford this at the moment. We have other sectors where renewable electricity is really needed. So we agree here. And then there is another comment about unwanted creativity, sloppy. I'm taking this in a way. We are a campaign organization. And of course, we have our style. You must not like it. We have our objectives. You might not agree with it. And of course, you are not obliged to agree on what we say is a good use of money. Absolutely, this is your opinion. As I said, I'm only interested in preventing the catastrophe, and from this background, I feel relatively comfortable on my decision and my definition of how the money is being used. Governments, then the next question is about how to influence the positive outcome. It is nobody else than your government who is writing the plan, who is making the investment decision. Nobody else. The Commission, in our point of view, is in a way within its mandate, within the legislative framework, very keen to see the Green Deal served. This for sure. We would think the Commission is an ally, but the final investment decision solely within your government. Then is another question on hydrogen. Again, this is a very interesting topic. We think hydrogen should be left for areas which are, would we say, hard to abate, which have to work with high temperature, steel, cement, chemicals. We don't think it has a role in heating, definitely not in, let's say, the normal transport. Probably as well for air transport, this is still too much. So it has to be the little brother. Green hydrogen is the little brother of wind and solar electricity. Yes, there are a couple of conditions. It has 3 levels of conditions. There are certain objectives. The renovation of buildings, rolling out the digitalization, electrification of transport. There are 7 so-called flagships. These are the overall policy objectives, but still member states are quite free to interpret them. Then we have as well a quantitative target. 37% of each plan has to be allocated to climate and ecological transition. But again, it's not every glitter is gold. There is some problematic elements in it. And something as well, what Virginia mentioned, to each and every plan applies the so-called do no significant harm principle. This is as well an EU-based system, taxonomy, where over different areas of the environment, climate, pollution, water, resources, certain criteria apply. So I would say, you would ask, how useful is it? I think it's fair to say it prevents the worst. It is definitely not all fully proof, but as well, saying, speaking from the EU perspective, I think the European Commission and the EU legislator did the best what they could do, because still it was then despite all those regulations, and I'm repeating myself, member states still have a lot of choices. If they want to go green, if they want to transform their economies fully, they can do it. If they don't want to, they find a way to go around. Then thank you for the question about the EU's commitment to the Green Deal. I have no doubt the EU Commission is committed to it. It is the next 10 years as well economic development plan. It covers all areas of society. This is about biodiversity, energy, transport, food and farming, and whatever we see from the Commission coming forward, it's not perfect. We have good reasons to demand more in some areas, but I don't think that the Commission is the institution in Europe which blocks the progress on all these areas of the Green Deal. It is rather, again, member states, and each member state has a different interest. We have the big agricultural countries, France and Ireland, who have their particular interest in keeping their system of farming. We have the Nordic countries who have Germany, of course, in farming, Belgium. We have the Nordic countries who have a particular interest in maintaining their forestry. We have the Eastern European countries who are all dreaming of becoming the new gas hub, and so on and so on. So again, I think it is the cacophonia of your member states who hinder a perfect Green Deal implementation. Oh, we have some as well sustainable finance experts. The taxonomy directive. This is a difficult question if the recovery plans need to be in line. The taxonomy is a labeling for economic activities. The taxonomy says what does a substantial contribution, and the taxonomy says what provokes harm to the environment. And as I mentioned, the idea is that none of the projects are causing harm. So in a way, this is in line with the taxonomy. However, we don't have all the technical details for the taxonomy to work properly done. There is the first attempt on climate change mitigation, but other areas are not being covered yet. Again, the question for hydrogen. We see really there is a big potential for green hydrogen for new industries, right? Indeed, you would establish hydrogen installations there where you have a lot of renewable energy. If you cannot put the renewable energy into the grid, you can produce hydrogen with this. This can be then later put back into electricity, or you can use it for those few occasions which I mentioned. Yes, absolutely. But you tell me, in the north, how much over wind capacity is there? Or in the south, how much solar capacity is there not used? The thing is, we are just not up to speed with building the renewable energy capacity which we need to have in Europe and for the Green Deal, and as well to really put a lot of this into hydrogen.